Thank you. Abe, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, sorry, should I?
Sure. Yeah.
Is that good?
That's great. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I had it.
Okay.
I want to, if I could, begin to make my point by enlisting you all in a thought experiment. Let's say that the mosque, excuse me, let's say that the Park 51 project was not scheduled, not slated to be built a few blocks from Ground Zero, but right on the footprint of Ground Zero. And continuing this thought experiment, let's say that the imam of this imaginary mosque did not preach a version of tolerance and a version of intolerance, and sort of muddled the message in between, but overtly preached a violently intolerant message. Anti-American, anti-freedom, anti-democratic message. In that case, should we still feel, as, say, Mayor Bloomberg has suggested, that we would be ashamed of ourselves to raise questions, to object to that mosque? The reason I ask that is because the point is that it's still a zoning issue. There's still freedom of religion. Both would still apply. But it becomes obvious that at a certain point, commonsensically, you can object to something on grounds having nothing to do with zoning laws and freedom of religion. If we can acknowledge that, we can begin to talk about where the line is for who and why. I'm in complete agreement with my colleague. We can't make public policy based on feelings. I have no interest in doing that. The Park 51 project is not a matter for the federal government to get involved with in any way. They have absolutely every right to build it. But one's right to do something does not vitiate someone else's right to say, I don't think it's a good idea. We wouldn't be here if it did. And I don't know any serious objectors to Park 51 project who thought that it should. And who believe that the federal government should come in to do anything about it. As to what Park 51 means to me symbolically and metaphorically, I'm less interested in the sort of symbolism stuff and the metaphor. What is it objectively? I think is much more important. So what is it? It's an Islamic cultural center that will have a prayer room. We've heard all about that. It'll have a swimming pool. It'll have auditorium. It'll have all these things. It is an Islamic cultural center headed up by an imam who, he's on record, I'm not saying, these are his words, refuses to call Hamas a terrorist organization. He has said, while truncheons were coming down on the heads of Iranian dissidents after the fraudulent election of 2009, he wrote that President Obama should use this opportunity to show his respect for the Khomeinist democracy of Iran and do nothing. He wrote to the New York Times in the 1970s saying that the only peace in the Middle East will come when Israel is just another Arab-majority country. He said on 60 Minutes, as we all know, that America was, I've forgotten the quote, it's occurred so many times already, was complicit in the crime of 9/11 or whatever the language was. You have to work a little harder to be called moderate in my book. I'm sorry. I know moderate Muslims. I just got back from northern Iraq in June. None of them there, none of the people I dealt with there would hesitate for a second to call Hamas a terrorist organization. And it's insulting not to me, not to Muslims here, not to victims of 9/11, but it's insulting to the moderate Muslims who I've met over there to say to them, we've decided that your version of moderate Islam is a pipe dream. We're going to go with this guy. It's easier. This is as good as it's going to get. Not you. Maureen Dowd in the New York Times says he's moderate. Yeah, he doesn't say Hamas is a terrorist. He likes Khomeinist Islam, Shia Islam, Khomeinist Shia Islam. But that's as good as it gets, because I should be made to feel sorry for myself. I should be made to feel ashamed of myself unless I swallow that whole. So that's where I stand on the issue. I'm not opposed to mosques. In fact, on an aesthetic, dare I say, spiritual level, I'm even a fan. I think beautiful, clean space inside mosques makes a profoundly impactful statement about the possibility of God and religion. And I'm not opposed to Islam, but I think it's silly not to have a real conversation about what it all means.
Thank you. Aaron?
So, I guess, can y'all hear me? The mic is not that loud. Is it even on?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Sorry. I'm smart, as you can tell. So first of all, thank you very much for coming out. Appreciate it. I learned I'm at the School of Rock School, which is very cool. So good job there. I think with respect to both answers, I just have some thoughts, and my job here is, I think, to share those thoughts and offer some reflections. The first of these, which I think is sometimes not noted, is that Islam is an incredibly decentralized religion. Muslims constitute the most ethnically diverse religious group within the United States. I think that's pretty easy to say. Muslims tend to congregate within their own mosques and not coordinate across mosques and institutions, so that often makes it harder for decisions to be made. I think some of the problems, though, that I'm seeing in terms of the discourse are certain terms that I object to. For example, I object to the term moderate Muslim. I find it both uninteresting and actually dangerous, and I'll tell you why. Because it implies that, at some level, there is something wrong with Islam, so one must be only, to some extent, Muslim. The problem, as I see it, is that extremists and radicals have taken ownership of Islam. So rather than say that someone who has acceptable and peaceful views is just a Muslim, they're a moderate Muslim. I don't like the terminology because it implies that Islam is a problem. We may not always realize that that's what's being done, but that is what is being done. Secondly, I think that vis-a-vis Part 51, what I've learned is that Muslims have really not done a very good job of attempting to engage wider society. And I think that a lot of Muslims have become painfully aware of this in the last 6 or 7 months because they've seen the ways in which people talk about them. As a final point, I think what Part 51 also symbolizes is a lot of the tensions and problems that exist within the United States and within the world more generally, around economics, around economic anxiety, about the direction of the country, about our opinions of the current administration, about who's going to be in power, who has the right to set policy. And I think it's very interesting that many of the questions that we keep hearing around Part 51, around its suitability or appropriateness, tend to revolve around questions of domestic and foreign policy when those opinions aren't unique to Muslims. I think something like 1 in 5 Americans thinks that 9/11 was an inside job, right? Now that's absurd. But the point is that views that are absurd or that we disagree with don't hew to religions or ethnic boundaries. So the question is, why are we introducing these debates around a local issue? And I think that to get to the heart of that, we'll find that we're actually dealing with much bigger questions about where we are as Americans and where we want to go. And I think we're not going to do justice to the topic unless we are willing to contextualize what is happening with this issue with respect to larger issues. And I'm not saying, therefore, that you have to be on the left or you have to be on the right. I'm saying that we have to pay attention to these questions.